Shavua Tov, a gute Woche. I would like to tell story 144 of the Shivchei haBaal Shem Tov. The Shivchei haBaal Shem Tov is the oldest source of Baal Shem Tov stories ever published. The title of the story is Avdo shel haBaal Shem Tov be'olam ha'elyon, the servant of the Baal Shem Tov in the upper world, in the higher world, in the afterlife. Says the author of the Shivchei haBaal Shem Tov, Maaseh Shamati, this story I heard from the mouth of Rav Moshe, the brother-in-law of the sister of the Rav of Polnoi. Rav Yaakov Yosef of Polnoi had a sister whose brother-in-law was this Rav Moshe. He himself heard this story from the Baal Shem Tov when he was telling the story in the Kehillah of Nemerov in front of the townspeople, and he was saying these words. Now, through this source, we have exactly the words of the Baal Shem Tov. Once, says the Baal Shem Tov, I saw in a dream that I was walking in a field. And in my dream, I saw afar this fog. And I walked to the place where this fog was. And the fog moved aside. And the sun shone in this side and over the path, over the way. And in the other side was still the cloudy fog. And the place was like a path coming down, like the side of a mountain. And I walked all the way to the end of the valley. This is in the Baal Shem Tov dream, as he's telling, right? And then he says, I used to have a non-Jewish servant who worked with me for a few years, and then he left me. And I saw him walking with a very heavy load, big load of firewood over his shoulder. When he saw me, he threw down his heavy load and he prostrated himself before my feet. He kneeled in front of the Baal Shem Tov and said, when I work for your excellency, I used to keep Shabbos rather. I used to not work on the day of Shabbat. But when I left you, I went to work for a Mochsin. Mochsin or Muchsan, as I explain in prior stories, is a Jew who is at the service of the nobility. He's in charge of rent and tax collection and a few other services for the local poets, local land holding nobleman. So this non-Jewish servant sees the Baal Shem Tov in this dream, and he lets fall of his heavy load of firewood, kneels before the Baal Shem Tov, and tells him what happened after he left. He went to work for this Jewish Mochsin, and then he says, he gave me work to do on the day of Shabbat. I had to go to the forest and collect and bring firewood in the day of Shabbat. Well, now we are both dead, the Mochsen and the non-Jewish servant. So I need to bring this firewood in the day of Shabbat to Gehinnom, until there is enough for the Mochsin for all the days of the week. So instead of working the whole week to have enough for Shabbat, he was doing it the other way around. He had to work on Shabbat in order to bring enough for the whole week. That's why it was such a heavy load. Then, says the non-Jewish servant, I ask you, please wait here, and I will show you the place where you can advocate for my case. You can get me out of this punishment, because you're a very important person. You're held in very high esteem in this world. But I cannot do that now, because the guardians are very close behind me. The Baal Shem Tov tells him, if I am so important in this world, let go of this firewood and show me the place immediately. So did the non-Jewish servant, and took the Baal Shem Tov to the place where there was a heavenly palace. The Baal Shem Tov went in, and advocated for the case of this non-Jewish servant and had him exonerated from judgment. Pater min adin, he was exonerated, didn't have to do this anymore. And the Baal Shem Tov completed his story. When I advocated for the cause of the non-Jewish servant, I also presented the singuria, the defense of the Jewish Mohsen, and him too I got exonerated from the din, from the judgment. And so is the story. Not that we are advocating wrongdoing, but it does help to have a tzaddik on your side. I'm translating all the stories of the Shivchei of Shem Tov one by one and telling those stories here in my YouTube channel. Please subscribe, give me a like, see them below also the links. I am translating the whole story, the whole book rather, story by story from Hebrew to Spanish with the hopes to have this published. I would really appreciate contributions for this end. That's where the links are below. And please come back next week. Blessings to everyone, and I dedicate the merit of these stories to the Jews in Eretz Israel in these difficult days. Hashem should protect us all, especially those in Eretz Israel, especially those serving in these difficult days, and those who are captured in enemy hands. They should be released and brought back home as soon as possible, and that corner of Eretz Israel should come back to Jewish hands. Shavua Tov, a gute Woche.